Did you know that we're at war with Venezuela? Yeah, I didn't either, and neither do federal judges, including Jeb Boasberg, Chief Judge of the District Court in D.C. It's one thing to say that during wartime, the President of the United States, whoever it is the commander-in-chief and has all powers given to him by the Constitution, by Supreme Court precedent, and by statutes, including one left on the books from old-timey times, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It's quite another thing to say you can use these extraordinary superpowers when there's no war going on. And Jeb Boasberg is the rock in the hard place trying to protect our democracy from Donald Trump's worst instincts. He's looked the administration in the eye and sort of given them a middle finger as they continue to bash him outside the courtroom. Inside the courtroom, he reigns supreme. As the Supreme Court is next in line, because we also have a new decision supporting Jeb Boasberg from the D.C. Court of Appeals. We break it all down for you, keep it straight for you on Legal AF, the podcast. Take a listen.
Let's start, if we might, from the decision by Judge Boasberg. Tomorrow is your deadline to answer questions. Those questions include the following: what time did the plane take off from U.S. soil? Where did it leave from? What time did it leave U.S. airspace? And what time did it land in a foreign country? You have, 4, 5, 6 questions the judge wants answers to regarding the details of those flights over the weekend. How will you respond at the Department of Justice?
Well, our lawyers are working on this. We will answer appropriately, but what I will tell you is this judge has no right to ask those questions. You have one unelected federal judge trying to control foreign policies, trying to control the Alien Enemies Act, which they have no business presiding over. And there are 261 reasons why Americans are safer now. That's because those people are out of this country. The judge had no business, no power to do what he did. And he came in on an emergency basis on a Saturday with very, very short notice, if any, to our attorney to run in the courtroom. And this has been a pattern with these liberal judges. You just spoke about that. It's been a pattern with what they've been doing. This judge had no right to do that. They're meddling in foreign affairs. They're meddling in our government.
Again, the defamation of our court system. I mean, quite literally, federal judges hear things on emergency bases. This is the role of the federal judiciary. This was never a thing in the past before the Trump whining and victimhood permeated politics. That was even a question when I went to law school, when Popok went to law school, slightly before I went to law school, and those before Michael Popok, who went to law school before he. These weren't questions of import or of any substance, because this is the role of what the federal courts actually do. And as a result of the Trump regime defying the initial court order and coming up with this excuse about, it was an oral order or whatever, we've been covering on the MeidasTouch Network all of these stories of a guy named Andres, who's a gay hairstylist, political exile from Venezuela, not Tren de Aragua, now sent to El Salvador's concentration camps, probably going to die in a concentration camp while Kristi Noem parades in front of a group of prisoners at that concentration camp. There's the story about the DJ, the musician, the story about the individual who's here lawfully, asylum seeker, the story of someone who had a tattoo that was for autism awareness because a family member had autism, and that was said, you're Tren de Aragua, that's a gang sign. Autism awareness, that's a gang sign. Even when the initial ICE detention people told him, you're not a gang member, it's okay. They sent this guy to El Salvador. They sent women to the concentration camp in El Salvador, and then they had to be sent back because it's a male-only concentration camp. The soccer player, football player who had the Real Madrid tattoo, had the Trump regime complied with the initial order, those people would not be killed in concentration camps. And the question is, are you okay? Even if there were some gang members on that plane, which I think they should then have gone through the process where they're determined they're a gang member. You don't release them into general population. You make sure that they get the biggest penalties for the crimes that are committed. I'm not okay with people being sent to El Salvador concentration camps without due process. Again, call me old-fashioned about my interpretation of a law and order nation, but due process is something that should exist. You know, now you have all these people in concentration camps under the authority of the United States flag, dying and being murdered and the rest of their life there in concentration camps. I mean, it's ridiculous, and it's a despicable and shameful time in American history where this is taking place. And then you see the propaganda that she does and goes, the judge, the lefty judge. Look, this was a judge who was first appointed by George W. Bush to the Superior Court in Washington, D.C., then appointed by former President Obama. He's been the chief judge of the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Services Act, chief judge of Washington, D.C., Yale law student. By the way, when Trump goes after Wilmer Hale, Judge Nichols, the Trump appointee D.C. federal judge, worked at Wilmer Hale's as a partner. You know, and so you have these ridiculous, clownish, no offense to real clowns, as opposed to these Trump fascist clowns, because being a clown is a real profession, but being a Trump clown isn't. I mean, this is not the way the legal system works. I want to flag that. We should all be against that, regardless of your political party. And it's a bunch of nonsense injected into the veins of that Fox, I put this in quote, news audience, and it's horrific. Popok.
Well, before you leave, Boasberg said it best. He said when he did his hearing, he said, you understand, for the Department of Justice, you understand I'm not ordering the release of any of these people. I'm not ordering that the jails be emptied and these people be put into like the general population of America. You understand that, right? Yes. Okay, Mr. Ensign, you understand that you can continue to arrest people if you want for now under the Alien Enemies Act, the way my injunction is written. You understand that? And you can keep them in Guantanamo and all different places. The thing you can't do is to deport them without due process to a foreign prison under a phony war proclamation. I mean, that's the summary of that. And you got Pam Bondi, who I'm nostalgic always for the Biden administration and how they handle things, like when we see Signalgate and the rest. But to see an attorney general as a cheap political hack going after, you know, when she was saying he has no right as a judge to do anything to review the Alien Enemies Act. Well, actually, he does. And if you read the 1953 case of Ludecky, you would know that anything that has to do with words, their meaning, interpretation, and whether the triggering events to give a president power or not, even the utmost constitutional, absolute core presidential power like war powers, gets reviewed by a single judge in a single district, going up to a 3-judge panel of a court of appeal on the way to the United States Supreme Court. And every major case and constitutional case that you and I have ever studied and that we've ever covered has come up almost the exact same way. So this malarkey this drug that they try to peddle to the American people, that this is extraordinary, a judge interpreting the language of a statute or a constitutional provision. Yeah, ever since 1803 in Marbury versus Madison, that is the role of the federal courts. What they want is the thing you started this podcast with. They want the frictionless ability of an absolute monarch to make rulings without any pushback at all. He's got a doormat for a Congress, except for the Democrats doing their part. He wants a doormat or a limp noodle of federal judges, so that in a short amount of time that he has, and boy, does it seem longer, of being the president for the last time, he can do maximum damage. It is that friction between the plates and the courts doing their role to keep the presidency in line, the presidency doing its role against the federal courts and Congress. It is that tension, that friction that Louis Brandeis talked about in the 1920s, that is our checks and balance system. Or as Judge Beryl Howell put it recently, they are trying to upend the constitutional order of things that have existed for over 200 years. That's a clip from a full-length show we do. We call that clip the After Dark edition. Look at the time. You can tell why. And we do that at the intersection of law and politics every week on Wednesdays and Sundays. Sorry. Try it again. Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the MeidasTouch Network. And you can pick us up on all audio podcast platforms of your choice. We sit at the intersection of law and politics so you don't have to. And we bring it to you straight without blowing smoke or sunshine. Speaking of not blowing smoke or sunshine, come on over to the Legal AF YouTube channel. Legal AF MTN, hit the free subscribe button there. Help us to continue to grow that channel in collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network that I curate. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.